really like to experience Nashville as a highly sensitive adult. I spent a week there to find out. I'll take you on some sensory walkthroughs of some spots around Nashville and share some tips for neurodivergent visitors with a few of my personal experiences. Consider this a chance to get acquainted with the sensory aspects of Nashville. Nashville wasn't initially on my radar, but when my family chose it for the reunion, I went with it. When most people think of Nashville, they think of that main street with all of the live music bars, and that's Broadway. And yes, it is a full-on sensory experience. Visually, you'll notice the historic towering buildings blazing with neon, a cacophony of competing music and human voices, and hordes of people in the streets and inside bars and restaurants from pretty much midday onwards. For a lot of the population, this type of environment is really exhilarating, but for others, it can quickly become overwhelming and downright distressing. As an autistic ADHDer with sensory processing disorder, I found it all very, very overwhelming. So for me, that means I can't hear conversations with a lot of background noise because the background noise is louder than the conversation. I just found all of Broadway really intense. I did love the energy, I just wanted to turn the volume down. And because it was very crowded, the constant stimulation of weaving around other people, trying not to bump into people. Also, because we were a group, it also meant trying to stay together. So it was pretty tough at times. I did go to Broadway a few times, and the second time we really went earlier in the day, and that was definitely better. When you're there, a lot of the bars are really aesthetically pleasing. They're beautifully done. There's no doubt you're in a country music scenario. It felt like what Nashville should be. It's also worth pointing out that many of these bars also serve food. So from a smell point of view, you'll be smelling lots of food as well as alcohol and smell of humans. I vividly remember going to the Dirk's Bentley bar. It's one of those really large ones that has a live music stage on every floor. And we were there for food. And I personally went to all of the floors to see if I could find a quieter area, and there wasn't. Afterwards, we went onto the rooftop, which was quite interesting because you have all these great views over Broadway. And we took some great photos. Everyone in the group wanted to stay around for drinks, but it was too much for me, so I ended up leaving on my own. If you do want to stick with some live music, but perhaps a little less intense, then I can definitely recommend Printer's Alley. It starts just 2 blocks from Broadway off of Church Street. I would say it's definitely got a bit of a claustrophobic thing going on. There's also some really great restaurants in there. The places that do live music tend to be rock, jazz, blues, that type of music. Another thing to try if you're finding the crowds a little bit too intense is to dip into one of the many retail stores around that are selling the music memorabilia. It's not that they're less crowded, but they are less noisy. And I really love these "What Would Dolly Do" mugs. I also noticed that the area in front of the Nashville Symphony Building was very quiet. There was no events going on. So even though it was incredibly loud, visually it was a rest. I ended up putting in my noise canceling headphones for a bit and just having a bit of a rest there. I do have some additional tips on how to navigate Nashville further down in the video. And I'll also include some of the video clips with the unaltered sound so you can see what they were like at their natural volume. If you've been to Nashville, share your experiences in the comments below. Moving away from downtown, like any city, Nashville has a lot more calm going on. I'm sure that there are many quieter neighborhoods that would offer a welcome contrast to downtown and Broadway. So the area we stayed in was Music Row. Visually, it was really relaxed, even serene, because a lot of the buildings were spaced apart. You had a lot of trees and grass, lots of natural light. I do think that seeking out these areas are really essential for recharging. Even the bar scene in these neighborhoods were a nice break from the downtown experience. You know, for those that are sensitive to noise and crowds, then finding the quieter bars really makes the most sense. Let's talk about accommodation, because where you stay is where you recharge, and that can have a huge impact on your overall enjoyment. Especially after several hours of excessive sensory input, having a calm space is really beneficial. I'm also really glad I didn't stay in downtown Nashville. As I mentioned, we stayed in Music Row. It worked out well. There was essential shops and bars and restaurants all within walking distance. Some of our group stayed in a larger vacation rental, and I was offered the sofa, but I value my privacy more than saving money. So I actually got a little apartment that was 1 block over, and that worked out really, really great. What was nice about having places that have kitchens is that we could prepare our own food or order in takeaway, and having an option to eat somewhere quiet, even if it was food we didn't even cook ourselves made a lot of sense. Me personally, I like to plan at least 2 of my meals at my accommodation, not only because it offsets the cost of me paying for this whole apartment by myself, but also I just find that going out to eat all the time can be pretty overstimulating. There's a lot of figuring out where to go and then figuring out what to eat, and then you're waiting. And a lot of restaurants, they just don't offer the best sensory experience if there's music or bright lights, that type of thing. Coming back at the end of the day, just knowing I had favorite snacks, and yeah, it made a huge difference. And also, no regrets about paying for my own place, because this was a week of intense socializing. So it was really nice to have nobody to talk to. I also found a few quieter places that I went to with the group and on my own, both downtown and outside the city. Downtown, you have the Riverfront Park, and although there wasn't a lot of shade, it was away from a lot of the noise. And there were some interesting historical tidbits. There were some places to sit, and of course, it's a great place to watch the river traffic. The next one to mention is Vanderbilt University. It's actually not far from Music Row. It's open to the public, and it's really a wonderful place to just wander around, enjoy the nature, and soak in the atmosphere of calm. The shady leafy trees were a welcome relief from the sun, and the old architecture was really lovely to look at. Just outside the city is a place called Cheekwood Estate and Gardens, and this was recommended to me. Thank you, Sam. It was about a 20-minute drive from our accommodation, but it was well worth the price of Uber or Lyft. It's very peaceful and beautifully landscaped, so there's a lot of grass, trees, shrubs, floral plantings, and it's also particularly well known for its sculptures. What's more, it changes seasonally. So this was October, and it was beautifully done up for autumn and Halloween. I also loved the stables, which were really quiet and also told a bit of the story of the people that used to live there. The only drawback that I could see was that they had some live music playing, and it was too loud. It was too loud. They had food trucks there, and so I suppose it was a bit of a draw for people who were eating. Although I have to say there wasn't enough places to sit. Some of the older people in our group couldn't manage all of the paths on this estate because they were a bit steep in places. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, so now I have a few tips for navigating downtown. The first one is that they close off Broadway to cars at certain times of the day. I'm assuming that it's because during the very busy times when you have so many pedestrians walking around, the safest thing you can do is just not allow cars to go through there. I recommend planning your transportation in advance. I found out the hard way when I tried to leave downtown and my Uber didn't show up. I just needed to say this. I've been waiting to get in my Lyft vehicle for a long time. I ordered one car and it couldn't make it because the roads are blocked off in downtown Nashville, or where the big music scene is. So the lady actually said for me to cancel that one. So I walked and walked and walked, and I've ordered another one, but somehow I think this guy is stuck as well. He's not speaking to me, so I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just like hot. I feel like I'm working my way over to some kind of shutdown or meltdown. Just so thirsty, and I've got bags I thought I would take. I thought it would be nice and take back bags that belong to my mom's cousin and everything, but now I'm weighed down. It's not my idea of a good time. Essentially, I could have stayed at the noisy, crowded bar, but nah, thought I'd come out and wander the streets a bit. So I definitely recommend trying to plan out your transportation in advance, maybe even Googling what hours they're going to be closing, because it can make a big difference to your frustration levels. The other thing is that some of the buildings in downtown are pretty old, which means they rely heavily on people using stairs. There was an instance where 2 separate bars actually shared an elevator. So because some of our group couldn't handle the stairs very well, they escorted us to the elevator. It was literally weaving down hallways, through kitchens, and it was kind of interesting, but maybe not very convenient for anybody. So if mobility is a concern, I would check with the venues ahead of time. Some tips for managing your sensory overload. If you're passing through Nashville Airport and you're looking for a sunflower lanyard, there is a shop that has them. It's called Music Row Supply in Concourse C. If you're going to an event at Nissan Stadium or Bridgestone Arena, really good news, both of them have sensory rooms now. And apparently also the Nashville Symphony has some sensory-friendly programming and resources. Otherwise, have some noise-canceling headphones. They're really handy just to pop in when you need a little break. My noise-canceling earbuds were a lifesaver on Broadway. Sunglasses and a hat can help reduce visual stimulation, especially if there's a lot of bright sunlight or neon lights going on. Definitely schedule some downtime. Plan in some breaks in the day. If you're traveling with other people, my advice is to let them know. You don't need to be too specific if you don't want to. I actually experienced this firsthand where I just kind of disappeared off and they thought I didn't want to hang out with them. But when I explained the situation later, it was so much better. And so they totally understood. Yeah, I usually just make a plan to retreat to my accommodation and say we'll meet up later. Or sometimes I'll just go somewhere quieter, like that Vanderbilt University. I probably visited that campus most days when I was there. It's also worth researching the quieter restaurants or finding times to eat that are off peak. So perhaps like between the lunch rush and the dinner times. To sum it all up, I'd say Nashville is a really amazing city. It has a lot to offer for everybody. It really is a city of sensory extremes. It is all about knowing what you need and planning accordingly. I'd say don't let sensory sensitivities deter you from visiting Nashville. With a bit of planning and self-awareness, you can absolutely have a really fulfilling trip.
Here comes the original recordings. I would turn your volume down now if you need to.
Sucker down. Raise it